Good evening. My name is Rebecca de Cicco, and I am the founder and chair of Women in BIM. I appreciate your attendance. Obviously, everybody's very busy, and today's webinar is one of the first in a series of webinars we'll be hosting in Australia around some really important topics that we will hopefully be presenting back to industry today. So I'm just going to hold and just troubleshoot quickly an issue I'm having. So give me one moment. Okay, apologies about that. Always a last-minute glitch when you're running these things live, but thank you again for attending. As I said, my name's Rebecca, and today will be our first Women in BIM webinar. So for those of you who don't know much about Women in BIM, we are essentially an industry affiliation, industry group, formerly an organisation in the UK and Australia, and we're essentially an initiative to help to support women in BIM, but also women in the wider digital space in the built environment or the construction industry. So today's webinar will be a discussion with some esteemed guests around innovation in the built environment, and I will allow our panelists to introduce themselves once I've gone through a series of slides just to give you a little bit of background on Women in BIM, but also a little bit more insight into some of the work that we've been undertaking across the world when it comes to diversity and obviously the built environment. I'd like to firstly thank our sponsors. Basically, Women in BIM come together as a not-for-profit, so we do rely on sponsorship to help us to grow. We have sponsorship tiers across the world in Australasia, the UK and Europe and the US, and we have representation from all of those regions in regard to their sponsorship. Our tiers of sponsorship run from corporate, gold, silver and bronze, and I will have a special call out to our first ever corporate sponsors. We have now 2 corporate sponsors and 1 strategic partnership, and I guess it is important for you, if you are a Women in BIM member, to understand the relevance, because as a Women in BIM member, our corporate sponsors allow access to a variety of either training material or technologies to support your workflows. So I guess the first being Globally Training, long-standing supporter, and Globally Training have a discount for Women in BIM members for their 450 live BIM relevant courses. They have a obviously tracking and reporting mechanism within their platform, and they're a fantastic advocate for diversity, and they just hosted another Women in BIM webinar only recently. Ideate Software you may have heard of. Ideate have only come on board this year, but they represent Women in BIM as a corporate, primarily focused on in the UK, but obviously Ideate are a global organisation, and they've allowed our members to have visibility to upcoming products, as well as obviously discounts to potential technologies. And finally, we've made we've formed rather a strategic partnership between Women in BIM and Autodesk Research. Autodesk Research is one tiny part of the enormous organisation that Autodesk is, and Autodesk Research have another group within their group, which is titled All Voices Heard. All Voices Heard is very much about creating an opportunity for, as the text says, all voices heard. So to ensure there are all voices represented across the research community to drive diversity and innovation across their products, essentially. Autodesk research community also have given us access to, obviously, all of the Autodesk training and resources for Autodesk research, and have often mentioned to us, if there are more people that would like to get involved, particularly women, gender minorities, and obviously to widen that diversity pool, they're always keen to help. So I guess the first point really to touch on, for those of you who are interested, is why this is important. And, I'll talk about some of the industry drivers shortly, but essentially Women in BIM comes together as a global group to support not only women, but both women and men in helping to diversify innovation, to grow skills. We work together to support collaborative processes. We have a global community of women and men helping us to obviously drive change in the digital built environment. It's something that we take very seriously. And all of our projects are endorsed within the context of our 3 core themes. And those core themes essentially relate to really the wider industry initiatives around growing more skills and bringing more people into the industry, to help to promote or help individuals pivot into different roles which relate to digital in the built environment. And then finally, to ensure that we can help to support women so that they are not leaving the industry. Research suggests that more and more women are leaving the construction industry due to poor conditions and lack of flexibility. Still post-pandemic, this is still happening. Much of the research, if you're interested, has been documented under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals around gender equality and obviously growing, the different opportunities for women across all industries. So I guess the reason it was also very important back when we began was that it was all about ensuring that the industry, essentially the built environment industry, all sectors, all areas of the construction industry, were delivering more effectively. And we know that that's a massive issue for our industry today, that we have problems with obviously high costs, with slow delivery, with emissions and with exports. And that's why, as an initiative very early on, we were very much in alignment and endorsing the industrial strategy in the UK, which essentially started to dive into why some of these things were important. This was released 10 years ago today, which is has been quite a lengthy journey, particularly in the UK for BIM and digital construction. So we do now have, founded in 2012, you may remember our 10-year events last year. We have a core team, which is a global team, which helps us to support all global activities. And obviously, we continue to grow. We continue to have affiliation links with not only local communities and local groups such as BuildingSMART, we have Eric on the call today, but also groups such as the National Information Management Alliance in the UK, as well as other BIM4 groups such as BIM4 Water and the newly formed Zero. We continue to grow our people and projects, and obviously membership continues to grow. So it is obviously, indicating that it is still very important, and it will continue to be important for our industry. Other drivers for women in BIM not only include the uptake of BIM in obviously the UK sector, where we have our largest member base, but also now across Australia and New Zealand, where we have our second largest user base. But skills essentially across the industry are underrepresented by diverse people. We need a variety of men, women, and gender minorities supporting our industry and making sure that they want to enter and stay in our industry, because the skills gap will continue to grow with the uptake of both digital process and technology across our sector. We also have a strong driver for supporting women in the built environment around what we still know is the global gender pay gap, 18%, I found out yesterday, where we need to be moving forward. That's not just specific to the built environment, but the built environment is one of the poorest performing sectors when it comes to the gender pay gap, particularly in the construction, obviously construction related areas. I've mentioned our core team, but I guess just to make reference to some specific people today, we have obviously a large representation of people from the UK and Europe, but we have today on our panel Jenny Tseng, who's part of our core community in Australia, a regional lead and a director of Women in BIM AU. We also have Nicole Cicco, who is part of the obviously the organisation in Australia and forms a strong part of our community. We've also continued to grow, and we have essentially a global resource pool. We have 85 women and men who act as what we call regional leads. Regional leads are simply there to promote and endorse our initiative. They are from a variety of different backgrounds and different sectors. So I always encourage people, if you are interested, to become a regional lead. But like I mentioned, not only are Jenny and Nicole part of the Australian representation for Women in BIM, but we also have these people, I won't read out all their names, who offer great support, and I'd like to thank them personally for everything that they give back to Women in BIM. And finally, a mention to a couple of our key projects. Firstly, our mentor scheme, which we run every year. We now have made all of our matches for our mentor scheme, and many of you may know about the mentor scheme, but essentially, as you can see here, the numbers speak for themselves. We continue to have growth in this space. 2020 and 21 were primarily focused around the UK. We've seen enormous global growth in the last 2 years, with the regions represented in terms of the highest number of regions represented and the highest number of matches include the UK, Italy and Australia. And finally, one of the projects that we've just launched in the last 2 weeks is our Global Work Survey, and this is being run out of the UK by our core team member, Jenny Barrett. Jenny Barrett is with the University of Lancashire. She's helping us to support the Global Work Survey, which is essentially addressing 3 key areas. One is the inconsistency of role titles and role requirements for the digital built environment. The second is how they relate to responsibilities and how those responsibilities then translate into how that person or individual is remunerated. And this is to address, firstly, obviously, the challenge we're having with roles and responsibilities in the digital space. I know our panelists would be keen to debate that with me today, and also our issues with remuneration. So if you're interested, I will pop the survey into the chat so that you can have access to that survey. So without any further delay, I will ask our panelists to join me in turning on their cameras and audio, and I will keep this slide up as well. So I'm hoping you'll be able to see our panelists, and our panelists have now joined us. Am I right? Hello, panelists. Right, so I guess everybody knows who I am, so I will move around the virtual table and start with Jenny Tseng, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Jenny.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, welcome. My name is Jenny. I am currently the Technical Director for Digital Advisory in Mott, MacDonald. Also very privileged to be participating as a regional lead for New South Wales for Women in BIM, and also the State Manager for WIDAC, Women in Design and Construction, New South Wales. My journey over the last 2 decades has been across architectural space, project management, and currently in the digital space, looking after a variety of things that actually changes as the project goes, but mainly in the data integration and also assurance for DE. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Jenny. And Eric.
Yeah, hi everybody. Eric Bugeja, the chair of BuildingSMART, but also have a role as the principal for digital integration and capability at CIMIC and EIC activities. Glad to be on this panel today, so thanks for the invite. I think it's a very important cause, so whatever I can contribute. I guess part of my role being on this panel is to listen and hear some of the challenges that females have in getting not only into BIM, but into the construction and AEC sector, because we do have a massive skills shortage. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer, had a few broad roles over the years, started in manufacturing, worked as a design manager and project director on a few infrastructure projects, ran a few teams in architecture and buildings and broader large industry, and have taken up a role now on the construction side after moving from design, assisting in the transformation in the construction sector. also have a role at BuildingSMART as the chair for BuildingSMART. But yeah, but that's my background. So yeah, looking forward to having this discussion.
Thanks, Eric. That's awesome, and thank you for your attendance today. Appreciate it. And finally, Fara Mosavari. Fara, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Fara. I'm managing a couple of 10-12 BIM projects in terms of BIM in Beca in digital and innovation team. My background is in architecture, then I studied design, innovation and technology, and then worked in a couple of architecture firms, then moved to surveying and construction companies, and I'm very interested in BIM and digital engineering.
Yeah, great.
I forgot to say that I'm also helping Rebecca in the mentoring program that Women in BIM has, and to help women and encourage women for BIM in general.
Thanks, Fara. And I think, look, it's really important to mention both, you know, Fara and Jen, you know, have been very much great supporters for the mentor scheme, and the mentor scheme is our largest and most kind of, you know, heaviest project in terms of resource. So we appreciate your support. So thank you. So with that, I'll move to, I guess, some questions that I've prepared for the panel today around innovation in the built environment and really focusing on the diversity space. And I guess I'd like to start with Jenny, particularly in your role. You know, you're a senior leader at Mott in digital, and I'd really like to hear from you as to, you know, what are your thoughts about how we encourage more women to enter careers in digital construction? Oh, we can't hear you.
I think Jenny's muted.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, you're muted. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I was going to say this is a good question, and the one that I have been, you know, thinking a bit how to actually respond. And my responses over the years also changes, and that's because the observation that I had in my space is it's probably not for people there to enter in the digital construction. I think we're already in the digital construction because digital tools and requirements and workflow underpin the success of our all projects now. So we are probably already in the space, and it's to, maybe the question should be how to maintain the sustainable pathway for people to remain in the digital path. Why I want to come back is that we have already the domain space that adopting more digital tools than ever. And we are on top of that, adding more of the digital requirement, more from a data lens. And that's something that was a kind of COVID was a catalyst to actually add on. So in terms of that lens, how do we encourage more is probably more so for them to understand what it means to actually maybe further upskill to the next level of that of these digital skill set that enable them to do more in the built environment space, and to actually do more and consider a new way of doing things digitally, rather than actually just saying that is cutting across completely from like a brand new space. I believe we're already in the digital construction. Many people are just not fully aware of how capable they are because it was never actually highlighted. If not, they treat it as something that we're growing, especially with the new generations. So it's a very interesting observation that I think I have actually adjusted in the space that I am today, and also with what the new generation that we're fostering up and coming in the next next 10 years.
And I think, look, I think there's obviously some issues with capability. I mean, certainly capability is a huge problem, not just for obviously in the diversity space, but across the board. I mean, most of the conversations, you know, we're seeing in the built environment are around capability, you know, capability in terms of the technology space, the process space, etc. I think, you know, I guess that's a question maybe for you, Eric. I mean, how do we how do we grow that capability in BIM or digital? You know, how do we make sure that that's a focus for our organisations? And it's even just access to the learning, right? What do we need to do basically?
Yeah, and I agree with Jenny. And I think there's a combination of upskilling existing women in the sector and progressing their career through the ranks. But also, I think there's a big challenge in encouraging more women to actually get into this sector in the first place, to choose construction and engineering as a career, and the opinions of what that career involves. That it's a male-dominated space. You know, there's no opportunity in that space. I know my daughter, for example, she wants to get into engineering, and as I see her journey through school, I don't see there's full encouragement that there should be. The schools are trying, but I think it relies on people already in the industry, and I guess a lot of the women in the industry particularly, to go down into that level and say, this is a great place to be, this is a great sector, a great industry. You know, probably try and get rid of some of those old opinions of what the construction sector particularly was about, a very male-dominated space. And I know a lot of the women I've worked with over the years have actually enjoyed the sector. But I guess what we need to do is try and break down some of those barriers, both from a career progression and encouraging more women to actually get into the sector into the first place, and particularly with digital-enabled skills. So not just, I guess, from becoming a BIM manager or in that particular BIM space, but actually becoming engineers and construction people who have digital skills and are, you know, have that sort of knowledge to not be afraid of the technology, because like Jenny said, that it's all changed, right? You need to have those skills in any role that you take place, not only in engineering and construction, but all other sectors, but particularly in engineering and construction as the industry is maturing so rapidly.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that we've recently spoke about with other members is that, you know, a lot of women that choose this journey, you know, because if I give myself as an example, and I'm sure, you know, there are similar examples out there, is you kind of just fall into a role that sustains or feeds your interest, right? You know, and I was always very interested in digital. I was always very interested in the built environment. So, you know, I thought, let me see what I can do with this. But I practiced as an architect, and there was no visibility of what those roles, the pivoting of those roles might look like. So I'm interested, Fara, in your experience. You know, how did you get to, I guess, sit in the role of a BIM manager, and what made you do it?
Well, of course, support from Beca and my managers. But the main thing was the mentorship program that I had in Beca, and having a senior woman in senior position to support you. But I can also, I wanted to, because Jenny's point about maintaining women in BIM is one issue, but statistics shows that number of women is low. So encouraging women is the first I think we can do, and I know increasing the representation of women in digital construction and also diversifying the industry in general. I think reach out to women at all levels of education, from elementary schools to university. When I wanted to choose my subject at university, I studied architecture, then design, innovation, and technology. I never heard of BIM, and I've never heard of DE, digital engineering, and I learned it while working. And there was no information even on internet. Like, I was searching BIM on internet for a year, just gathering information, couldn't find much of training courses. I even considered doing a master in BIM. There isn't such a thing. So it was very hard to find education training materials. One of the greatest things that I think Beca is doing is the STEM partnership with for example, Mac Robertson's Girls High School, and it's a work experience and mentoring program for year 11 and 12. So when they joined us in Beca, they had no idea about so many job titles, like, for example, what is BIM, what is DE, what is airport manager. They thought that airport managers are making airplanes. Then we have to explain to them that it's about trackways and runways and infrastructure. So that was very interesting and very rewarding. The other thing that I was facing during past 7 years of working was all the unconscious bias things that we're not aware of it, even like we don't know that we have it. So I think unconscious bias training can help. Things that I can mention, like prove it again bias. So women often have to prove their competence and capability repeatedly before they're recognized, while men are more often taken at their word. For instance, a woman's suggestions in a meeting may be overlooked until a man makes the same point. Double bind biases. So for example, women often face a double bind in which they are either seen as likable but not competent, or competent but not likable, or performance evaluation bias. I'm thinking of how we can make performance evaluations completely blind. So for example,
yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting because in terms of trying to promote, many organisations, I can speak for us internally, have very stringent diversity policies and targets that we need to adhere to, and it's a very important element of not only, you know, the built environment traditional roles, but the wider business. How do we ensure that we have the right people? But I'm keen to hear from the panel around trying to prove that a diverse team, you know, can I guess result in innovative thinking, you know, and you know, how do we ensure that that is a priority for businesses? Because without equal representation, particularly in leadership positions, it is very difficult to endorse innovative thinking and to have, you know, productivity based on the fact that, you know, it's just not equal enough, not diverse enough. Well, what are your thoughts?
I'll kick off. So currently I lead also the Mott's digital delivery practice for Australia. And I wanted to actually unpack the word innovation. So we actually have innovations and optimization. And that actually is also supported by the digital literacy program and also the cultural piece that comes behind it. What I wanted to actually state in particular is that there are things that we want to innovate, and that's actually to look at a new way of doing things, but there are also things that we can do to improve and optimize the way we currently already are achieving. And I think for me, it's important that we actually support, and we all touch point the organization probably should maybe in the next phase looking at the benchmarking capability skill set as a framework and the model behind it. The innovation and the idea of how to optimize things, I think, comes because diversity is more coming from the different people with a different background, ethical, and also, you know, they have different traits. And interestingly, female tends to be more detail driven, and also we have actually a more fine tuned, but we also had a tendency to actually adapt change faster. But men has a bigger, sometimes bigger ideas that actually is all about the bigger vision and stuff. And together across the diversity group and the teams, it kind of worked really well because one will be focusing on how to do the implementation and one will be on strategic. And it's really good to have that bouncing back and forth, whether it's actually leading in the innovation, which requires a lot of blue kind of ocean thought versus optimization, which is actually fine tuning to make sure we continue to improve the processes as a loop. It actually support well to have a more diverse team in different ratio at a different time of the maturity of that the project, not part of that transitions, to actually get the best result from both ends. So for me, the diversity actually comes from two things: is to help the thought leadership at the same time optimize the way we do things better that's already in place, if not work together to look at how we can actually better communicate and provide the benchmarking space in the organization.
I think, look, I think sorry, you can add, Eric.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think I realised how important diversity was in innovation. And like, you don't appreciate it until it happens, and I think that's one of the issues. And I think and not just gender diversity, but all sorts of diversity. So whether it's cultural diversity or personality diversity as well, having different personalities come together. And I think as humans, we've got this innate drive that we tend to surround ourselves with people that are like us. And I think you do that because you don't always want to be challenged. And I think an important part of innovation is to be challenged. And the only way you're going to be challenged is by having people that are different to you and think differently, or have different opinions, and open yourself up to hear those opinions as well. So that is one of the challenges. And I guess when we're looking at roles and we're hiring people for roles, the way we assess those roles tend to be based on the people we've hired in the past. So you don't always then open up the role to look at, someone who's going to do the role that's going to look at it a little bit differently. So that's one thing that I've come to realize over the years is, how do you develop the criteria for the roles that you're putting out there, and making sure that you're not just developing that role in a way that's just going to be because, I've had a male do that role before. So they're the sort of traits that I've put into the role for the future. So how do I open it up to look at some of the soft skills? And in industry, we tend to have experts who come in and look at how we form teams based on personality. Everyone's done those personality tests where you do those tests and they say, okay, you match up with that person, but they don't always look at other aspects, some of the softer skills that you don't measure, which could come from having a female in the team or having someone from a different culture in the team that could bring a completely different perspective on an idea and really properly drive innovation. That's what innovation's about: open thinking and broader thinking and thinking differently.
Absolutely.
I wanted to add a
Sorry,
quick point. Sorry, Beca, if you don't mind. I was actually reading a book the other day, and there was one sentence that really struck me, and it said that as humans, we really need to actually tell stories to make sense of the change that we're making. And I think diversity also supports the way and how we tell the story and communicate, because it's so intangible the way we're doing things right now digitally. So it's really important to have that diversity, that people actually understand and bounce off each other and agree and be able to communicate what we're trying to achieve together on what this great innovation thing that we're trying to actually embark on, and tell a story together. And so we can make sense of the change from all different backgrounds and all different cultural perspective across the team and across different level of our, capabilities across the organization. I just want to land that it was a very interesting point, but it kind of resonated really well with me of how we are telling each other and how we help each other is by storytelling, and it's by then do we actually relate to each other with all these different backgrounds together to embark on, a greater innovations ahead.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges with that is that I'm getting some feedback. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good. One of the things that I was saying was, you find that the innovation and the diversity can come from people that potentially have English as a second language, and that's also another challenge that we're facing, particularly with women, and most of the younger women that I speak to through the mentor scheme. There are similar challenges. There are similar themes that keep popping up, and most of those come down to confidence and having a voice and being able to voice the opinion, or have, the ability to voice that opinion. You're in a room, albeit virtual or face-to-face room with a bunch of people, and to be able to be innovative, you need to be flagged to have a voice, and sometimes that doesn't happen. And I'm just wondering, how do we address that? Because that's a huge problem in my opinion, and I think it's something that we need to be looking at it, an industry as a whole. What are your thoughts, Fara, maybe, if you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, no, of course. I wanted just to mention that diversity can also help with problem solving, because it basically studies shows that diverse groups are more effective at problem solving because they're coming from different perspectives, different cultures. It also helps with better understanding of client needs, because the construction sector often serves a diverse client. Having a diverse workforce, I think, can help companies better understand and meet the client requirements. So if I'm from Middle East, I'm from Iran, and if a client is from Middle East, I definitely would understand their requirements better than an Australian colleague, for example, or European colleague. Yeah.
And that's one thing that we struggle with, I believe, and I'm keen to debate this with you guys, is in Australia, is that diversity of thought when we look outside of the country, or we try to bring in international experience, etc., sometimes isn't valued as much as it could be. And that's a problem, I think, in this country, particularly when it comes to Indigenous.
I'm going to put my 2 cents in here, and I think we got to a point where we actually know what tools and stuff that we're putting requirements in. We got the clients also on the journey. I think the focus will be on the more of the educational training and mentoring opportunity, as you said, Rebecca, right? Having a voice, the key is in communication. So there's a lot of us now, I think, if I'm correct, not just Mott, all the engineering and also all the other ones is focusing on how to build better communication skill set that actually explained what we are trying to do and the purpose of what we're trying to achieve. And at the same time, as you said, right, understand each other, that where we're taking each other. And if we can download our thoughts into words, that thought leadership only stays in one's mindset. So I think having a voice also means that we should actually better support our people on that soft skill, human skill, I'm going to call it, building in terms of communications, building confidence you touch on, but having a voice to actually identify and articulate that what we are trying to do or what actually is still a gap. So people are aware of how we can actually support each other to close some of these skill gap or challenges, and how do we voice them, and potentially having more of the integrated and industry partnered forum would be also a very, very key, because if one person cannot articulate, maybe we can have the other help of the other professional network to actually unpack that. So again, coming back to having the conversation piece or an open forum that people feel safe to actually share, and it can be in any language, but also people that actually have a support group that feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, because I'm keen to hear your thoughts, Eric, because I think sometimes there's difficult, right, to do that. So,
well, I guess the other part of that is providing the ability. So if you're having a meeting, for example, with a large group, and there could be, whether it's females or people from a different cultural background, and they might not feel comfortable voicing their opinion in that large group, or they could be an introvert and they just don't feel comfortable voicing their opinion. So it's important as a leader, male or female leader, to provide other ways for providing opinion. If you're just always holding big meetings, which that's where you get your thoughts from your team from, then that's not always going to work. So you've got other ways where people can voice their opinion. It doesn't have to be in front of a big group, or you've got other mechanisms to hear people, or even in a meeting to specifically provide a forum for certain people who don't typically speak up, or not always the ones that are always have the voice in the room. And I think that's something I've learned over the years, is to make sure that I'm doing that when I'm running a team meeting, that, and if people don't feel comfortable talking in a meeting, that, maybe you're doing it one-on-one, or you're having one-on-one sessions outside of the meeting, so you're hearing that voice. Because I know it, from what I've been told, it's difficult. If that's not your personality, or if you're a female in a group full of males, it might be, might not feel comfortable speaking, your opinion in front of everybody else. So, that's one thing I've heard, and then, and it's something you've got to, force yourself to do, to say, how do you provide those different ways to hear people's thoughts and hear those opinions?
And I think the other thing.
Very interesting.
Sorry, Fara.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that what Eric mentioned is very interesting, because I was reading somewhere that a good leader is the person that is the last person to talk. So, because usually leaders, I don't know, managers, they talk first, but a good leader is the person that is the last person. So you hear everyone, encourage everyone to talk, and then you're the last person.
Agree.
I was going to say also, role modeling also important. Having someone that actually is of your female leaders being able to speak up and not afraid of actually voicing their opinions, I think also will go a long way in terms of encourage the confidence of other peer colleagues, right? That probably have never tried, but also seeing that how the courageous, the leaders in the tables also being able to be recognized by with their knowledge and sharing of the experience, I think is also a really good kind of way of like moving forward. So you don't always have to actually go behind. Yes, we do. Some people are not comfortable, but I think seeing other people doing it also gave them the courage and innovation to actually be more courageous and speaking forward. Because one of the things, Rebecca, I think you probably agree, there's a lot of great knowledge that currently lives and unspoken at the moment. And I think having the role model and one of the mentoring is to encourage people to be able to speak up on the table. But Eric's point is also critical to have the male champions in the room to support, encourage, and recognize when a female spoke up. Her opinion is equally as important as the others on the table. I think that's also collectively as the industry, we should support each other, doesn't disregard of which diversity that you sit in.
I also think there's a culture in, and it's not just, we spoke about this again on another panel the other day, it's not just in the, the site construction space, but also in the digital construction space where it can be a little confronting because it is quite specialized, right? So if you're saying something, you need to make sure what you're saying is valid and it is correct, and that's difficult when it comes to what we do because everybody's got an opinion, and there's only so far you can go with trying to justify a different approach to things. And this is why, again, I often used to say it was really easy in the UK. We had one mandate and everyone knew what they needed to do, and we could all debate the different technologies, but it was it was really easy. But in this country, very, very challenging because some of the young women are even saying we don't know if we can kind of stand up and say, well, you should be calling X document X rather than Y, for example. So it is challenging. Yeah, I guess from a BuildingSMART perspective, Eric, what are your thoughts? Because there are some challenges in terms of implementation and trying to promote productivity. That is one of the challenges, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, and I guess the space that we're all in can be a very confusing space because, like you say, everyone's got different opinions on what they think it should be or what it should be called or what's the extent of what we do. And there's a lot of new roles that we've developed over the years, and there's confusion about what do those roles do. Even stuff, like BIM managers are very new in a lot of different sectors. In architecture, it's probably more well known, but in infrastructure, some of these roles like BIM manager, digital engineering manager, information manager aren't really fully understood roles. But yeah, just I guess those who understand it, being able to communicate to those who have been in an industry for a long time what it's all about, how to force the change or implement the change. Sometimes it takes not even someone but might not have 20 years experience. You might only have 3 years experience, but you've got a very good knowledge and experience on how this could impact the industry. But you're talking to people with 40, 50 years of experience who've been doing it the same way for a long time. So, even as a male to male, that can be difficult. So you could imagine from a young female to a very senior male who's been in the industry a long time saying, well, hang on, we could do this a little bit differently and we can be a lot more efficient and we can do this better, is challenging. It's challenging even as a male to male, even with me with quite a few years experience talking to other people. And that takes quite a lot of skill, and that's skills that are very difficult to learn, but they can be learned, but it takes courage as well. So it's challenging, yeah. And how do we improve that? I guess it's by the more people we educate, and the more I guess it moves from a minority to a majority, it'll become easier, where we all start to get aligned. And I think that's one of the other challenges of our industry. We're not all fully aligned. Like we've all got different ideas or opinions on how it should happen. And then all people start to see is a lot of infighting about we should be doing it this way or we should be doing it that way. So one thing that BuildingSMART, I guess, are trying to do is to try and bring people together to try and get consistency in terms of how we call things, or what does it mean, and what does this mean, and what does that mean, and at least we can move this discussion away from what do we call things to we're all trying to actually meet the same objective. So let's just focus on the objective of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree, and I think it's interesting, even just looking at the three ladies on the session today with our titles. Obviously, I'm surprised, Fara, that you're referred to as a BIM manager, when I thought, the BIM manager title is very much starting to lose its relevance based on the uptake of digital engineering in this country. What are your thoughts on that, Fara?
Well, I think, well, that's a hard question, honestly. But the good thing about BIM, the good thing about BIM and digital engineering is that it's an interdisciplinary topic in general. And anybody from any background can join, anybody from any background in electrical engineering, structural, mechanical, and it's never late. So if you're even studying Master of Mechanical Engineering, you have the opportunity to join BIM and DE roles. And what's happening now, we're trying to do a sort of program with Melbourne Uni that is with Master of Engineering and IT, because everybody thinks that DE is about IT, and it's not. Digital engineering is not necessary. You don't need to be necessarily from IT background. You can be from any engineering, architecture, any background in construction. And so I'm not sure about your question, Rebecca. I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts.
Yeah, I guess it was referring to, I mean, again, the work that we're doing for women in BIM around that specific topic, the role title, and that relates to responsibilities, because, I've often had debates even, 10, 15 years ago with people around, what is a BIM/digital engineering manager, and how do you define those roles so that there is clarity, in terms of what your expectations are in your business,
So I think BIM is more of, like, building information management is more of managing the construction projects, making sure that it complies with the ISO 19650, coordinations, clash detections, but also some aspects of it is about digital engineering, automation, improving processes, bringing IoT, AI. So it's a combination of both. Usually my job is like maybe 70% BAUs, current projects, delivery, but I try to focus 30% of my time on cutting edge technologies, how we can innovate the solution, not just repeating same process, same workflow every day. I try to have that balance in our team. But sometimes it's hard with the load of work that we have.
Well, look, I'm going to jump to some questions because I'm conscious we've got 10 minutes left. So I guess I'll direct the question to the panelists, and if you can just answer as well as you can. But the first question I've got here is, what would you encourage in terms of strategic thinking in businesses to endorse and support more women in digital? I think that's a good one for you, Jen.
I think more visibility, certainly. I don't think we are at the point of we have celebrated and also in a way kind of highlighted the leadership role with the female leadership in the digital space yet, because we're still a minority. But I think more of the awareness and recognition and visibility in the space probably will go and help the industry further. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that the digital space still quite a new kind of in a way sector, because this is actually a new discipline. And I wanted to just touch base on what Fara was saying is university are actually developing a new curriculum for digital engineering. Being a new discipline, it means it will come with more its challenges. But as some of, I would probably say we are probably early adopter and some of the pioneers and stuff, we can probably make sure that we also recognize others and just share a bit of a spotlight when things happened and share more stories on what has been achieved in this space. certainly in my workspace, the team usually would do a bit of show and tell to the internal businesses. That is not particularly disciplinary specific, but cross-disciplinary, how is the people has contributed to the greater outcomes and success of the projects. And I think that kind of gave a bit more momentum of the people first wanted to be in the space. Secondly, recognizing the appreciation and efforts that the female or male and the diversity of the teams contribute to different aspects of the things. And I don't think we do enough yet, but I would actually think that it would very much encouraged and also at the same time highlighting what are the opportunity in training and skills still to be had in the practice of digital engineering space or digital construction as a whole. And so for me, that's probably something that I would wanted to actually support more of in the current role.
And I think, look, I think we're moving, and I can only say it for myself, what I'm seeing based on my experience is that we're moving beyond just conversations around digital delivery and BIM and digital engineering. We're moving into wider digital transformation discussions with our clients. And I think that's what I'm seeing in terms of the number of requests for, for services and things like that. So I think there is digital as a whole, and I think if we can start to, I guess, address that in our companies and say it's not just, BIM being the dirty word or digital engineering being a dirty word, it's a wider digital debate, then I think we'll get somewhere. But another question here is, and maybe it's for Fara, is, how can we make sure that we have visibility of more female role models from different experiences and different backgrounds in digital?
My short answer is expose early and often. From a young age, expose girls to a variety of professions, including those in STEM fields. That would help. I didn't have that opportunity, and I just knew about like typical engineering terms, electrical engineering, mechanical, and I thought that I have to choose between those. So I had no idea about all the new topics and I don't know, subjects and courses, and and that's what Beca is doing with students from year 11 and 12. That I think is very rewarding.
And I think the way that I justify the fact that we need more women leaders in the digital space is just through the United Nations work and the Sustainable Development Goal reporting, and that the United Nations obviously have themes for International Women's Day. The last theme was Digit All across Asia Pacific, which was obviously about getting more women in digital. So it's a big issue, right? We just got to try and flag it.
Yeah. One thing, Mott, sorry, just one more. One thing Mott has taken is attending and affiliate with that is Inspire the Future, which is more elementary school that want to focus on technology topics. To Farah's point, a lot of people thought this is something that you can only do after you have achieved something, but it's a new career pathway potentially that they have not thought that existed, and so or even thought about picking it. At the same time, it's also something that can be, I think we all talked about earlier on, reskilled. So even if you're in a domain space, it's something that you can actually enable yourself later on. So I think that's still 2 layers, but the early engagement with the young elementary and primary kids to know that this is actually a new thing that's out there. It's not your traditional role, but it actually is something that's exciting that you can choose from, and you'll be well supported in the industry. I think it's something that's raising the awareness of that. It's pivotal in our current day age.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think, look, it's important, and it's important for us to keep talking about that, because obviously to try and raise awareness and try and get more obviously women involved in this sector is still going to be a huge challenge, I think. And I'm keen to hear, just I guess finally from your perspective, Eric, as a question that I have for you is how do you I guess encourage your daughter to explore opportunities in engineering given the nature of the industry and some of the challenges that we face? I mean, what are your thoughts? How do you give her that positive spin?
I guess just making sure I'm encouraging it and not, trying to say that the door is open and it's actually a good space to get into, because there is such a shortage of skills. So you're always going to be in demand. And if it's something you're interested in, and I guess that's the first bit, right, is not forcing it and saying, if this is something you're really interested in, and just no matter what it is, but just encourage them and say, how can we help, or how can we support you in going down that career pathway? In terms of, I guess, the other side of it, and this probably relates to the other question, is how do we ensure career progression? And I think this is with anyone, that any leader in the industry, one thing I think you try to do is that you protect your team, especially in the digital space. You try to protect your team to allow them to do the innovative stuff that they're doing, and that doesn't get blocked. But on the flip side of it, where they're doing something good, is to, rather than you as a leader presenting it up the chain, you actually bring them into the room and say, okay, you present to the people above me all the great work that you're doing. So you're giving them, there's visibility of the work that they are doing, that you're not taking credit for it as a leader, you're actually giving credit to the people who are doing the work. And then that allows more career progression to happen, because you're seeing the value that that person's providing to an organization. I think that's male or female, right? Because I think that's a problem that I've seen in many industries, that leaders have teams that are doing great stuff, but then the leader is presenting it as, look at what we're doing, rather than just bringing the person into the room and getting them to present it to the leadership team above. So I think that helps with career progression. But yeah, it's just encouragement, not just from me, and I guess exposing them to other female role models to say, look, there are a lot of females in the industry who are doing this and making a good career of it and enjoying it, and because that's something I can't provide. It's connecting them, and that's why I think organisations like Women in BIM are good, because it provides that mentorship program, provides the opportunity to expose them to that, and not just to female mentors, but to male mentors as well. So, but I should say I've just become a male mentor, so it's so I'll be experiencing that as well.
We need
I encourage more males to do it. Yeah.
Thank you. We do. We do need equal representation, and for me, diversity is getting everybody in the room and keeping it as fluid and innovative as we possibly can. So we need more male mentors, more male support for women in BIM, and that's something that we'll always be looking for. So
can I add one more point, Rebecca?
Sure.
Eric just triggered a really thought that I had, and we talk about career progression. I think one thing I wanted to highlight is, and it's a positive spin on the role and responsibility that we were just talking about. Yes, we may actually have all these different roles and responsibility and positions, but that's actually quite exciting for me to observe, because it means that the progression is not just vertical, it's linear progression. You're able to do things that you have never thought of cross-disciplinary, because previously, if you are just in a domain, you go vertically. But now because of being you're in the digital space, you can actually go across the different areas of domain expertise to actually practice and engage and collaborate. And for me, that's quite exciting. It's actually never able to happen, but because you are more generalist, you can be a specialist, but you also can be a generalist. That means that you're not constrained and limited by only doing a vertical ladder. You can go horizontally into many different areas that you are excited at. And that's, for me, also innovation. So I find that quite exciting. I just want to highlight with a positive spin that, yes, there are changes, but these changes are also good, positive changes that is taking us forward as a community and industry together.
Thanks, Jen. So such a good point to finish on. I think totally agree that, there's different ways you can navigate your career. And I think the last point to touch on before we finish today is, reach out to, your organisation and the resources you have available to you to find out, if you are interested in moving into that kind of role. And if you are in the digital role, always connect in with, your like-minded colleagues, but also with wider community to get that perspective, and learning. So with that, I'd like to thank our panelists. Big thank you to the three of you. Obviously, It's a busy time of the year, so I appreciate your time. And if anybody has any thoughts on the topic, or if you'd like to get in touch, please contact us at our email address here or on the website. So thanks again and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All the best.
Thank you.